Good afternoon, my dear students. I hope you are all doing well and making the best of your time by studying and learning new skills. Today, I've chosen a topic for your lecture, and this is Salman Rushdie's The Commonwealth Literature Does Not Exist. Now, before we start the lesson proper, we have to understand what actually the word Commonwealth means and what Commonwealth literature does. Why does the writer say that it does not exist? And even if it does exist, the writer does not want to belong to this group. What happens and why he says so? This is the main crux of the essay that he has written here. Salman Rushdie was born on 19 June 1947, and he was one of the key representatives of contemporary Commonwealth literature. As an Indian British novelist, he was widely acclaimed for his novel Midnight's Children, which won him the Booker Prize, and this book has also been hailed as the book of the century. So it is one of the most significant works of Salman Rushdie. Besides, Salman Rushdie is also known for his several other novels like Shame, Satanic Verses, etc. The present essay has been taken from his collection, The Imaginary Homelands, which was written during the period from 1981 to 1996. And this essay, this collection of writings here includes Midnight's Children and also his other essays. And in this entirety of collection, what Rushdie tells us is his definition of migrant identity. Why migrant? Because Rushdie was an Indian who settled in the UK. And the themes of Indian diaspora. I hope by now you are familiar with the expression diaspora. And what does diaspora means? Now, diaspora actually reveals the emotions, the thoughts, the ideas of those who have been migrant or those who have immigrated to the West due to one or the other reasons and who have settled there. But in spite of the long stay abroad or in spite of their participation in the socio-cultural activities in another state, one is not able to forget his own country, his own motherland. And this is what forms the diaspora is a very interesting aspect of the writings of all writers who have been writing from the West on India. In this essay, in this collection of essay, in his title essay, Rushdie writes, let me read it from here. Writers in my position means writers in my position, meaning writers like me, who are exiles, that is, who are exiled from where? Exiled from their own country, or immigrants. What does the word immigrant mean? The word immigrant means a person who has gone to live in another country, or expatriate who lives outside his or her country, are haunted by some sense of loss. What sense of loss? The loss of not living in the soil of one's motherland. So this is one of the laws that the Indian diaspora suffers from. So the people who are exiles or immigrants or expatriates, they are all haunted by some sense of loss, some sense of not living, not being rooted to their own motherlands. Some urge to reclaim, to gain back, to look back at their past, even at the risk of being mutated into pillars of salt. Pillars of salt, can a pillar of salt last for long? No. So if they are able to recreate what they have already lost, that loss can be recreated for a temporary phase of time, but that cannot be created permanently. And how do the writers want to create that feeling? How do they want to reclaim their past? How do they want to get back their past? That they will try to get back their past by writing, through their writings, through literature. But then see, these pillars of salt, they can, it can be muted into pillars of salt. But then soon Rushdie realizes, what does he say? He says, we will not be capable of reclaiming precisely the thing that was lost. So what has been lost cannot be gained in its entirety. One can gain some aspect of it, one particular aspect or the other, but what has been lost in being exiled from one's motherland cannot be gained in entirety. That we will, in short, create fiction. So how the writers are trying to recreate or reclaim back their past? Through their fictions, not actual cities or villages. So actual cities and villages cannot be uprooted from their position, can they? No, they can't be, because since they have been exiled, they have immigrated, or they have become expatriates. So that those villages and cities that they have left in their own motherland cannot be created. They can only be created fictionally, that is through their writings. But invisible ones, things that do not have any concrete structure, because they are invisible. Why invisible? Do they not exist? Yes, they do exist, but they do exist in the imagination of the writers, and that is why it is called the imaginary homelands. That is the title of the essay, imaginary homelands. That is, the homelands, the motherlands have been created, albeit in a invisible manner. They are rooted down where? In the writings, in the fictional outputs, in the literary outputs of the writers. But they are all very much imaginative. They are all imaginary. Indias of our own. So all the Indias of our own that the writers have created in the different aspects, they are all imaginary homelands, because the writers have tried to reclaim back their past, gain what that they have lost, anything that they have lost through being exiled, expatriates or immigrants. What they have lost, they are trying to reclaim it back again. They are trying to reclaim it back. How? Through their literary outputs. Now, what does the word Commonwealth mean? The term Commonwealth etymologically comes from the word wealth. Surprised? Yes, because the word wealth came from the Old English word weal, W-E-A-L. That meant wealth, welfare and well-being. So the word wealth was actually associated with well-being. The Commonwealth of Nations is actually a political association of 54 member states. Nearly all former territories of the British Empire. We are all familiar with our Indian history, isn't it? We are all familiar with that part of history where India was occupied by the British, and we lived under the colonial empire of, we were once a colonial empire of the British England, isn't it? Now, these 54 countries, these were all part of the British imperialistic adventures that they had taken up, and these 54 countries form part of the Commonwealth of Nations, which the British form under their dominion. The Commonwealth of Nations is a political association of 54 member states, nearly all former territories of the British Empire, and nearly all former territories of the British Empire. So, and Commonwealth literature is used to refer to the literature of the former colonies and dependencies of Britain, excluding the literature of England. See, so Commonwealth literature means a literature written by the people belonging to these 54 colonies, and the literature written by them form the crux of what is called the Commonwealth of Nations. Commonwealth literature, the Commonwealth, the writers writing from the Commonwealth of Nations, their writings have been grouped together in England as the Commonwealth literature. So the this word actually has a two-way interpretation. Firstly, it tells us directly, the word Commonwealth literature immediately recalls or reminds us back to the time when we were the colonies of the British Empire. And secondly, it also the colonization of India was actually not a very happy event in the historicity of time, and so the fact that India was once a colonial empire, was once a colonial state of the British Empire, is associated with the pain and the sufferings, the anguish of a large number of people of our entire nation. So the outputs, the literature that has come out from it, if we are noting it under the Commonwealth literature, it also tells us about the fact that we were once the dominated, and the British were once the dominators. They were the master class, and we were the servant class. We were the slaves of the British Empire. So it reminds us of a past, of a history which is actually not a very pleasant one at that. Secondly, it also narrows down the very ambit of English studies, doesn't it? If we make compartmentalizations, if we make compartments, like if we define Commonwealth literature, or say if we define literature in this aspect, literature from India, literature from Sri Lanka, literature from Pakistan, it gives the literature of these places an exotic element. It gives them an indigeneity, but at the same time it also narrows down the very aspect of this. If the all Indians are we do not write in a vernacular language. Many writers are writing in English, and several people write in their vernacular languages as well. So if we define that this English is written by an Indian, so will that literature be can that literature be at par with world literature, with the world literature, meaning the English that has been written in the world environment, in the vast arena of world literature? So there is something that demarcates it, that differentiates it. So when we talk about English studies, I think, and you should think about it as well, whether that literature should be compartmentalized, or is it proper to compartmentalize it into narrower subdivisions, or would we consider English study as something that is homogeneous in nature? And being homogeneous in nature, it should include literature, and literature written in English from all the different places of the world, not only that of the Commonwealth literature. So at the same time, and interestingly, when they wrote the Commonwealth literature, they grouped the Commonwealth literature. England did not belong to this group. Why not? So England was the conqueror. England was the imperialistic nation, and these 54 countries are their colonies. But these 54 countries together form the Commonwealth of Nations, and with England, including England. But the literature of England there is not a part of this Commonwealth literature. So there is somewhere a play of hypocrisy here, isn't it? Don't you find a play of hypocrisy here? So if it is a Commonwealth of Nations literature, it should include the conqueror, that is literature of England as well. But the literature of England is not included in Commonwealth literature, and this is specifically where Salman Rushdie is questioning the very identity of Commonwealth literature. That is, the definition of Commonwealth literature is not proper. So it is somewhere there is something missing. Now I've written here a very short history of the word Commonwealth, from where it came. Let's see. The word was first used by Oliver Cromwell after establishing the Republican government in England in 1649. The term was brought alive after 300 years in the Statute of Westminster in 1931, when, with the creation of the Dominions, the British Empire was rechristened as the British Commonwealth of Nations. See, here I have given you a picture. The dark blue colored areas are form the Commonwealth of Nations. These nations form this. India, the entire India is in dark blue. So you can very clearly see how India is a part of this. The names have been provided here too. We have Australia, we have New Zealand here, Canada, Nigeria, Trinidad, Tobago, Kenya, India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh. So all these countries, interestingly, Pakistan and South Africa, in spite of being Commonwealth countries, the literature is not included in. They are not Commonwealth countries, but they are included in the literature of these times, because Pakistan was formed much later. Okay, let us go into the text proper. So I've divided your lecture into sections. We'll read the text properly. When I was invited to speak at the 1983 English Studies Seminar in Cambridge, the lady from the British Council offered me a few words of reassurance. It is all right, I was told. For the purposes of a seminar, English studies are taken to include Commonwealth literature. At all other times, one was forced to conclude these two would be kept strictly apart, like squabbling children. These two, that is English Studies Seminar, English Studies and Commonwealth Literature, was something that was not to be mixed together, that were to be strictly kept apart. So these underlines that I have marked in black, these are the sections that I have underlined for you. So when you read your own text, please read these sections very, very carefully, because these are what sets the text apart and gives us a highlight of Rushdie, what Rushdie has actually wanted to interpret here. So he clearly tells us that they did not, one was forced to conclude these two would be kept strictly apart. Which two? The English Studies and Commonwealth Literature. Like squabbling children, squabbling, quarreling children, or sexually incompatible pandas, or perhaps like unstable fissile materials. Fissile materials, what does the word fissile mean? Fissile is related to an atom or an element, and this refers to elements which can undergo nuclear fusion suddenly. So they are not to be mixed together, they are not to be kept together. So English literature and Commonwealth literature and English studies are two of these kind. A few weeks later, I was talking to a literature don, a specialist, I ought to say, in English literature, a friendly and perceptive man. As a Commonwealth writer, he suggested, you probably find, don't you, that there is a kind of liberty, certain advantages in occupying as you do a position in the periphery. So, here is another question that is very significant. So, what does the other, a Commonwealth writer, another Commonwealth writer tell Rushdie? He tells him that, don't you think there is an advantage of occupying a place in the periphery? So, if you are in the periphery, you will be, you will be in competition with the writers who are in the periphery itself, and not with the writers who are in the center. So the very concept, the very thematic aspect of the essay has been laid down here. So there is a periphery and there is a center. Which is the center and which is the periphery, you can easily conclude from the title itself. So the Commonwealth literature is the periphery and the center is the English studies, and these are not to be mixed, or these are to be set apart. So they cannot be in synced together, and they have to be separated, they have to be kept in separate completely. Now but this writer from Commonwealth literature, he says that, don't you think there is an advantage here? What advantage is he talking about? Because the advantage here is that there are specific prizes that have been Commonwealth prize. So Commonwealth prize will not include writers of English studies, but rather it will be a competition in a box, where only the writings of the writers from the Commonwealth nations will be in competition with each other. So he says that this is a kind of an advantage. So it is not the periphery is a place where in the periphery the writers of the periphery are together. So they are supposing, a very simple example I'm going to give you. If in a class there are 5 sections, and the sections are divided in according to merit. So the last section will have the worst students, but in spite of that, the first, the second or third, the first boy or the first girl of the last section is given a prize. So what does that mean? So you are putting all the bad students in one particular class and giving them a prize. So Commonwealth literature is, or Commonwealth prize according to Rushdie, is one of that type. So you are putting all the writers of the Commonwealth literature nations into one group, and then you are are giving them a prize, you are noting them, you are claiming them, you are recognizing them. So what does that mean? At the same time, it means that you are not the center. The center is English studies, and you cannot be in the quality of the peripheral writers is not similar to the ones who are writing in the center. So it is completely different from each other. So the very thematic point, the theme of the essay is completely laid down here. So there is something which is at the center, and there is the Commonwealth literature which is at the periphery, which is at the margin. Periphery মানে বারবারই বলছি, periphery মানে হচ্ছে margin, যেটা সেন্টারে নয়, যেটা মেন নয়, যেটা periphery মানে হচ্ছে যেটা ইম্পর্টেন্ট নয়, যেটা কিন্তু যেটা সেন্টারে থাকে, যেটা এইমড অ্যাট, সেটাই কিন্তু ইম্পর্টেন্ট, আর যেটা মার্জিনে থাকে সেটা পেরিফেরি, সেটা কিন্তু ইম্পর্টেন্ট নয়। হিয়ার কমনওয়েলথ লিটারেচার ইজ দ্য পেরিফেরি অ্যান্ড ইংলিশ স্টাডিজ ইজ দ্য সেন্টার। And then a British magazine published in the same issue interviews with Shiva Naipaul. So who was Shiva Naipaul? Shiva Naipaul is actually the brother of V.S. Naipaul. See, here I have noted down Shiva Srinivas Naipaul was a Trinidadian and British novelist and journalist, and he was also the writer of novels like Fireflies, Black and White, and Unfinished Journey, which became very popular during those times. Buchi Imasita, Florence Onibuchi Buchi-Masita was a Nigerian-born novelist based in the UK from 1962, and she wrote plays and autobiography as well as works for children. Her important works include The Second Class Citizen, The Slave Girl, etc. So interestingly, you find that Shiva Naipaul and Buchi-Masita, they were also expatriates. They had also they were living in a foreign country. They were living in a country which was not their motherland, and so their literature also falls into the compartment of Commonwealth literature. In their own way, said much the same thing. What the same thing? That Commonwealth literature and British literature, British English studies, were not the same. The three interviews appeared, therefore, under the headline Commonwealth. From here. In my interview, I admitted that I had begun to find this strange term, Commonwealth literature, unhelpful and even a little distasteful, and I was interested to read that in their interviews both Shiva Naipaul and Buchi-Masita in their own way said much the same thing. The three interviews appeared therefore under the headline Commonwealth writers, but don't call them that. See, so sarcastic and ironic. By this point, the Commonwealth literature was becoming unpopular with me. Isn't this the very oddest of beasts? Later on, Rushdie associates this oddest of beasts with a chimera. I thought a school of literature whose supposed members deny vehemently that they belong to it. Worse, these denials are simply disregarded, no importance, disregarded, disrespected, no respect is given to this idea, this thought that the writers do not want to belong into a box, they want to think out of the box, they don't want to belong to this box, don't compartmentalize us, we want to belong to the entire group of English studies and not merely Commonwealth literature. It seems the creature has taken on a life of its own. Which creature? The creature of Commonwealth literature. So when I was invited to a conference about the animal in, of all places, Sweden, I thought I'd better go along to take a closer look at it. Which animal? Animal here is the oddest of beasts. Which is the oddest of beasts? The Commonwealth literature. Why does he call it odd? We will soon find out when he uses the expression of the mythological creature chimera and what he tells us about it. More so in our next lecture. Thank you. Please stay with me.